Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to Superhuman Radio. Yesterday, we had a commercial-free show because the sound card died. But as you can see, I've fixed it. And so we have music and the normal run-of-the-mill show that we're producing today. And thanks to those of you who watched yesterday and listened, even though it was kind of an awkward interview. Today, we're going to be joined by somebody who I've always wanted to have on the show. And thanks to Wade Lightheart at Bioptimizers, he made that possible. We're going to be talking with Paul Chek today. He has a huge following, brilliant guy, and it's really straight shooter, which, you know, there's a lot of smart people out there, but excuse my French, sometimes they're full of shit. Paul's not one of those guys, as you're going to find out in just a second. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. Before we get started, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. The Tasty Pastry was supposed to be an alternative to the Pop-Tart, and it's become so much more. It tastes like real cake, and you won't eat it just because it fits your macros. It's got 4 to 5 net carbs, less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high leucine, high-quality protein. But they taste so good that your children will want them. And that's a rarity because you can't get your kids to eat a healthy protein bar. They'll turn their nose up at it, but you will have to fight them over these. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 today. Save 10% off your order of Tasty Pastry. And now, without further delay, bring my guest on. Welcome to the show, Paul.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Carl.
So before we start talking about the last 4 doctors you'll ever need and why this message is so critical for the general population, because a lot of people in this audience probably have a similar lifestyle, but the reality is that there's a large number of people out there who are oblivious to the evolutionary edicts that mean we must do certain things to stay healthy and alive. Let's talk about the Chek Institute for a second, because you have trained a lot of physicians who were oblivious to these facts as well, right?
Yeah, we have over 60,000 people that are at some level of our training program. It's our Chek Academy is a 4-year program that covers all aspects of corrective and high performance exercise. So taking people from being very injured, post-surgical, all the way to elite athletics. And then we have a holistic lifestyle coaching branch that teaches all the key elements of nutrition, lifestyle, mental, emotional self-management, how to use your mind effectively to create what you want in life instead of just living out old habit patterns and doing what everybody else that's doing that's not working. And the science of how to coach people through behavioral change. I also have a series of lessons called the PPS Success Mastery Program, which basically I surveyed my patients over many, many years, and I've been doing this for 38 years, so I've been at it for a while. And I identified 12 key factors that are roadblocks to success or living the life you want and did a lesson on each of those. So those are the main programs that are all integrated together in the Chek Academy. And it's attended by people from every aspect of the health and fitness world, the medical world, nurses, doctors, therapists, psychologists, you name it, they're in there. And I designed it as a multidisciplinary program to cross-educate people as to how to know when to refer to each other so that nobody tries to be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
So Dr. Andrew Weil is a holistic physician.
Yes.
And very popular.
Yeah.
But I'm not a fan of his, and I'll tell you why, because of one thing that he said one time, and I'm going to ask you to opine. He said to learn to grow old gracefully. And to me, this is the opposite of the way I live my life. I live my life pushing back on aging.
Yeah.
I believe that I can do anything I want to do at any age if I'm willing to put the effort in.
Yeah.
And conquer it. So what do you think about this notion, learn to grow old gracefully? Just accept aging as it comes to you.
Well, I think when somebody says something like that, you have to look at it in the context of their perception. You know, I'm 60 years old and I can still outrun and outlift most 25-year-old elite athletes. And I hold rock lifting workshops where I teach people how to build things out of stone. And I can lift huge stones that a lot of big, bulky, muscly athletes can't even get off the ground. And they look at me and how the hell do you do that? And I tell them it's you have to have a science to conditioning. And most of you guys are so weak in the core, you can't lift something you can't stabilize. But when it comes to that comment, what I tell people is something very simple. The day you start acting old is the day you get old. If you want to stop from being old, then just stay young. So I keep lifting heavy things. I keep growing my mindset. I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. So my kids keep me engaged in life and active. I also have a 41-year-old and a grandchild as well from my first son, who was my first marriage. For me, really aging is really much more of a mindset and a lifestyle than it is a biological reality. I'm still fit and strong, but it's just a matter of living as though you're not old and not falling into, Dan Siegel says something very important about the mind. He says, the mind is like a river. On one bank is rigidity, on the other bank is chaos. And the problem is as people age, they tend to go to the bank of rigidity where their ideas get rigid and they stop learning and growing, and they get in rigid habit patterns, most of which have been programmed in by corporations, eating junk food, staying up late at night, doing things you don't love doing for a living. So you have to medicate yourself at night when you get home to survive your choices. And so I know that to stay youthful, you got to stay in the middle so that you can observe the chaos and look for meaning in it, see the rigidity and look for it in your own life and say, how is that serving me? Because ultimately, to be an adult is all about taking responsibility for the choices you make. In fact, I define an adult as someone who says what they mean and means what they say. And I define a spiritual person as someone who takes responsibility for what they create moment to moment. I think anything else is just a bunch of fluffy bullshit.
Right. I have a saying, stronger is younger.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if you're stronger today than you were yesterday, then you're younger today. Because we assign strength and flexibility and all those attributes to youthfulness. And as we get older, and I also think people use age as a cop-out today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm just going to accept this. I can't do this anymore. Well, no, you can do it. Start working at it. Take little steps and make them big steps. But no, I'm with you on that, and I love that. And by the way, I'll be 64 in June.
Yeah, we're pretty close then. Yeah. The other thing we've lost is we lost our elders in native tribal societies. In hunter-gatherer societies, there's a great book called 10,000 Years from Eden, Metabolic Man by a naturalist, Charles Heiser Warthen. He shows through comprehensive analysis that most hunter-gatherer tribes could get their work done and feed themselves and do all the work they need to do in the first 4 hours of the day. But while they were out hunting and gathering, the older people that were the wisest and most mature and the most empathetic, compassionate, and made the best parents educated the children through dance, through stories, through arts, through crafts crafts, initiated them into their myths, and really taught them in a way that they could engage and learn with the level of development of their mind, unlike all the mathematical logical crap we poison kids with today. And so what we have now is people get older and all they can focus on is getting a bigger television and a cruise ship and disengaging from society. And so all the wisdom that should be flowing into the children has now been replaced by social media and brainwashing and corporate bullshit. And that right there is a major disease that's got our country in trouble. And it's also why we have so many young old people, because they're not being inspired by healthy old people that have real wisdom. We just have a bunch of teenagers in old bodies, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree 1,000%. Talk about the last 4 doctors you'll ever need. How did you even arise at this concept?
Well, what happened was kind of shocking to me, really. I began my institute in 1995. I started lecturing professionally in 1988. I had a lot of clinical experience by the time I started it. And some of my most advanced students and even my instructors started coming to me saying, Paul, I know so much and you've taught us to evaluate so much. We can evaluate people for 8 hours straight and looking at all their internal systems, and we gather so much data, but we're actually quite confused as to how do you decide what's the most important, because a lot of these people come and they have 50 things wrong with them at once, which is pretty normal today. And so I realized I had internalized my own process of how to gather the data and decide what is the most important to act on. So I went into meditation and connected to my soul, which is the consciousness within, and said, I need help to synthesize my own internal process. And so what came out of that was what I call the 4 doctor system. And so what I found is, first of all, the word doctor in Latin means teacher. So we need to make that distinction. I'm not talking about 4 guys with white coats, because they are the worst people to go to. I'm talking about the 4 teachers that live within you that are the real doctors. And Dr. Happiness is the chief physician. So Dr. Happiness really is all about what is it that you're willing to do to create happiness in your life, and what is it that you want to do to express your love as your vocation or your career, so that you're making love every day. Because if you do what you love to do, it's sustainable. But if you're just working for someone else for money, it's not sustainable. That's why we have so much addiction in the world. And Dr. Happiness is the overarching doctor that says you have to have values. And the values are, what is happy making for me? When am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And whose responsibility is it? It's mine. Therefore, we have to have values to create happiness, because sick people have a hard time being happy. So the values that Dr. Happiness has to contain, and this is very important, because to quote psychologist Jerry Wesh, if you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis. And what I found over and over again, no matter how good a program I wrote somebody, they often wouldn't follow it because they didn't have something that was more important to them than their pathology or their illness or their disease or their injury. So they had a lot of illness behavior, and people that don't like their jobs want, they want to be supported by workman's compensation or something like that.
Well, and I want to jump in here because I want to note something.
Yeah.
We have a population today that is proud of their disease states. They talk, that's all they talk about. Oh, I went to the specialist today and he said this about that. So they put me on a new that's all they talk about is their disease states. Mm-hmm. When I started to notice that, I thought, if you're a believer in things like that what you focus on, you will obtain, or any type of a spiritual approach to guiding your own life. If all you talk about is your illness, all you're ever going to be is ill.
Yeah, yes, it's what's called illness behavior. My analogy for that is misery loves company. And remember, when you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis. But if you don't have a dream, then your crisis actually becomes your nightmare, and it's the only thing you focus on. So you spend your whole life living and acting out what you do not want, wishing you had what you do want, but being unwilling to do the work to pay attention to what your body's been telling you all along. I tell people, look, you have to work at making cancer. It doesn't just appear magically. It takes 10 or 15 years of ignorance and not paying attention, with the exception of things like firemen who are in burning buildings full of toxic chemicals. Most people's cancers are lifestyle pathology. And so I say, look, nobody gets obese overnight. You look in the mirror every day and you watch your body growing and growing and growing and getting more and more uncomfortable, but you keep eating the same foods and listening to the same doctors and taking the same pills. So ultimately, the sad part of it is a lot of people have to learn to use their creative power to create what they don't want and get into enough pain to become good students. And that's what I call the pain teacher. When the pain teacher shows up, then I have a captive audience. And unfortunately, people are so happy being unconscious and not participating in their life. And we also have this serious problem of most religions, especially the Abrahamic religions, make the body dirty and sinful, make women sinful and sex sinful. So we have a lot of very sick pathological programming in the religious systems that basically makes our bodies something that we're trying to get out of, just like, you know, Adam and Eve were sentenced to toil in the earth and lifting rocks and working in thorns for the rest of their life for eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is really a myth, but that most people don't understand. The myth really means pay attention to the fact they didn't even know they were naked till they ate from the tree of knowledge and good and evil. What it means is when you have awareness of choice, you have to wear the outcome of your choices. And prior to becoming awake to your own choices, you don't even know you're naked because you're unconscious. So just watching the media and believing what other people say and not paying attention to what your body's saying is to remain unconscious and expecting somebody else to rescue you. This is why I hate the treatment model that we have in Western medicine, because by definition, if I say, Carl, I'm treating you to dinner, you automatically assume I'm paying. So when people go for treatment, they think because I paid the doctor or the therapist, I'm going to lay on the table, do nothing, and they're going to make all my problems go away.
Right.
So in my system, I teach everybody, we do not treat diseases that have people. We coach people that have acquired an illness or a disease so that they learn to take responsibility for themselves. All Chek professionals are taught you only do for a patient or a client what they cannot do for themselves. Everything else they have to learn. They got to learn to stretch. They got to learn to mobilize. They got to learn to eat. They got to learn to breathe. They got to learn to poop. They got to learn to sleep. They got to learn to think, and they got to learn to create. And if you're not teaching that, then you're not teaching health. You're just part of the disease that has the whole world in a real rough state.
Now, all of these things I've learned, the things you're talking about, the stewardship of your own body.
Yes.
They require, and once you're down the rabbit hole and you have an illness, treating the illness, regardless of how you treat it, is of no great value unless you first remove the insults.
Yes.
Made you sick. So do you help point out the insults, the bad behaviors? You say, this is why you have cancer. These, you eat sugar all day, That's
what my whole system is. I have probably the most comprehensive holistic system of analysis in the world. When people come to see me as a client, they have to fill out about 8 hours of paperwork on everything from their childhood traumas to their diet, to their lifestyle, to their sleep cycles. I want to know what your poops look like. I want to know how many times a day you're pooping, what your pee looks like, what your pee smells like. I'm going to look at your hair, your fingernails. I'm going to look at your structural problems. By the time someone sees me, I know more about them than their mother ever did. And then what I do is I sit down with them and show them this is how this behavior here produces this response in your body. This staying up late at night and not turning your Wi-Fi router off is contributing to your global inflammation, which is making you tired, which has turned you into a coffee and a sugar addict. So I show them how to identify the etiology of the choices that they're making, and then say, if you want a different result, you have to make a different choice. And first you have to understand the principles of health, because if you don't understand what health is, how in the world are you going to create it?
Okay, so let's talk about all four doctors. So we talked about Dr. Happiness, which is the overarching concept, because if you're in search of happiness, you're on a path that's going to make you ask the right questions
Yes.
and eliminate things in your life. What are the other three doctors?
Well, the Dr. Happiness, then we have Dr. Movement. So Dr. Movement is all about how much movement do you need and what type of movement do you need to meet baseline physiological health. And once Chek professionals have you at baseline health, then we say, what is your dream? If your dream is to play with your grandkids, then we design a program to optimize that. If your dream is to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, we build a goal structure and a stage program to accomplish that. If you're a professional athlete, we look at your biomechanics, we look at where your movement deficits are, we look at how to integrate your motor system and what we do with that. So when we're looking at Dr. Movement, we're really looking at the importance of movement. And all my doctors have a physical, emotional, and a mental level. So we have to be able to move our emotions through our body or they'll make us sick. We have to use our mind productively to create our dream and distinguish what is dream affirmative and what is not dream affirmative. So Dr. Movement then moves to Dr. Diet. Dr. Diet basically works on the principles. We have to have clean, healthy soil. The soil is the foundation of everything that we eat. So if you don't have healthy soil, you can't have healthy plants or animals, and you're eating all of them. So sick soil makes sick human beings. So I go from the soil to the plants to the animals. I describe what biodynamic and organic farming is. And I tell them there is no such thing as a diet that works for everybody. It's an illusion. There's about 5,000 books on diet. You can find them on Amazon. And none of them have worked. We're the sickest, unhealthiest people we've ever been. So what my approach to movement is based on Weston A. Price's teachings and my own research. And that is our body and our genetics have unique needs. And those needs can change from day to day, from meal to meal. When I lift heavy weights, I'm very carnivorous. I want to eat a lot of meat, but on days off, I can go as a vegetarian and feel fine. I just let my body tell me what it wants to eat. So I teach individualized eating, and I teach a system for how to read the language of the body and connect with your inner consciousness and let it guide you. So there's 3 levels: paying attention to the feedback you're getting from your body, which I do a series of questionnaires that they can fill out so they can see what's happening. Then using muscle testing to see how your body responds to any input. And then just connecting to the wisdom inside of yourself, which I refer to as soul. And I teach people how to connect to that. So there's 3 levels of learning to let your body and your inner self guide you. And then you're always in a feedback loop. I tell people never take vitamins or pills and take what's on the label, because it could be too much or too little for you. So check in with yourself. And I also use a 4-day rotation diet system so that people can track food by genus, and they eat any of the foods on any given day for 24 hours, but then they don't eat any of those foods for 4 days. So that gives the immune system a rest from any of the genus of foods for 24 hours so the immune system can calm down. And I encourage them to eat no more than 2 vegetables and 1 meat, so that if they're having a reaction, it's easy to decide, well, it's either the potato, the egg, or the chicken. But if you have 5 things on your plate, it'll take you forever to figure it out, because even today, the blood tests for food intolerance and food allergy are very unreliable, even though they're promoted as reliable. I've done double blood draws on myself and many patients, and there's no correlation between the same blood from the same lab. So this is why you've got to get involved in your life and in your diet. So someone might eat potato, egg, and chicken and find they got a headache. And I say, well, next time, remove the food you eat the most, because that's usually the most common offender, and put something else in there. And if your headache goes away, then you know you need to stay off that food for at least 3 months and then reintroduce it by itself so you can see what it does to you. And I've been able to help people with every disease under the sun with almost nothing but learning how to eat and breathe and move and the basic 4-doctor approach, because the body doesn't want to be sick any more than we do. Then it's got many redundant systems, and the body's an amazing teacher. So Dr. Diet then is really about individualized eating, but Dr. Diet also has an emotional level that says, I teach people the body has 3 levels of diet. It has a physical diet, an emotional diet, and a mental diet. So if we're not creating happiness in our lives and working to have healthy relationships and choosing people that are in harmony with our values, then we get emotionally dysfunctional, and we're consuming things to medicate our emotional unrest. And often what happens is people don't realize they're eating to try to fill an emotional deficit, such as people that are in marriages that they haven't been happy in for 25 years, but think God's going to burn them in hell if they move on,
I want to sing that song, Killing Me Softly, with his song.
Yes.
This is who I was.
Yeah.
I was 39 and I was told that I was going to need a pacemaker. I got up to 330 pounds. I was in a marriage that I didn't like. I was doing a job I didn't like. So I ate voraciously. I had a Wendy's here that I used to drive through when they first came out with the double stack.
Yeah.
And I would get 3 double stacks on one bun, a Biggie fry, and a Dr. Pepper. And I would do that 3 or 4 times a day. Then I'd eat lunch with my guys because I had an alarm company and, we had technicians. And then I'd go home and I'd eat, and I ballooned up to 330 pounds. I was literally eating my sorrow down, trying to fill a hole that I felt about my life. But I had children, and I thought, this is what dads do. You suffer silently, and you go on, and you just keep doing the thing. And I almost killed myself. Now, today, I'm on no medications, except I'm on HRT. I am. But I was on a dozen medications back then, and I was told I was going to need a pacemaker. And it was really weightlifting that changed all that for me.
Yeah.
Because when I found a study that showed that the greatest reconstructive effect on the heart was from heavy resistance training, I thought, I'm going to get me some of that.
Good.
Rebuild my heart, and that's what I did. But I want to ask you a question. So Randy Roach and I did a show in 2007 called Humans in Captivity. We have lost all of our instincts, all of that innate knowledge that was passed transgenerationally when we're hungry, what we crave. And the other problem is the thing that has made us so successful at survival is we're hybrids. We can eat anything and survive, not necessarily thrive, but survive. And as a result of that, our diet is very, very broad. I am thinking, and I've been thinking this for years now, that food combining in and of itself is a bad idea. We should eat one food at a time. What do you think about that?
Well, I think food combining, the restriction of certain foods that don't work together it's important for people who have lost their digestive capacity. Most people by the time they're 35 are hydrochloric acid deficient. They're enzyme deficient because they're eating so much processed dead foods. I mean, everything you eat in nature is full of enzymes. That's what makes food rot. So if you keep eating food without enzymes, you deplete all your enzyme systems, and then you find that you can't digest effectively. But I don't have to worry about food combining, and I don't know any healthy person that does. When sick people come to me, I don't want them eating things like rice and meat together because the starches need an alkaline environment and meats need an acid environment. And so what happens is you get incomplete digestion, which leads to a lot of gas, and it leads to a lot of unbroken down food antigens. And whenever you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, you can't kill parasites and bacteria and viruses in foods if you believe in the virus concept. So hydrochloric acid is absolutely critical. And most people that go to the doctor with low hydrochloric acid are told that they have too much because they've got GERD.
Right, because the esophageal sphincter opens up when the pH of the gut gets too high.
Right, and what happens is that because the stomach won't release food to the small intestine until it's broken down effectively, they got meals stacked up on meals literally coming out of their mouth. So they put these people on antacids, and I've done what's called a Heidelberg capsule test on countless people that were given antacids and told they had too much stomach acid. Most of them had almost zero hydrochloric acid. And that's a fantastic way to get a fungal infection and a parasite infection, which is rampant out there. So the first thing I do is put them on hydrochloric acid supplementations and get them to start eating as much raw food as they can to bring the enzyme levels up. And I also tell people, if you have a good source for organic free-range meat and you're eating things like beef, eat it as raw as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And so food combining is really for sick people, but there's so many sick people. It's something that needs to be considered as you rehabilitate the gut and the enzyme systems.
So I'm a huge believer in taking my hydrochloric acid in between meals because we did a show many years ago that the doctor showed that by taking baking soda in between meals made autoimmune disorder symptoms drop. And the logic behind it was that when you take baking soda, while it does raise the pH momentarily, the gut responds by lowering the pH and it produces more hydrochloric acid. I said, well, why not just take hydrochloric acid, tablets in between meals? And which he kind of said, well, I guess you could do that too. So I do. I take my HCl with the meal, but I also take it after a meal, about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, to finish cleaning up what my gut didn't do on its own. You think that's an absurdity?
No, as long as it's working for you. One of the things you need to be careful with hydrochloric acid or digestive enzymes is if you get more in them than your body can handle, it'll start burning the lining of the stomach. So you'll actually get almost identical symptoms that led you to needing them in the first place. So one of the things I tell my patients is think of all the symptoms you've got right now. Start using this enzyme or hydrochloric acid, go up a little bit at a time. And when your digestion feels really good, you can either stop there, but if you go further or as your body heals, you'll start producing more hydrochloric acid and enzymes. But now the same dose that made you feel good can start making you bloaty and gassy because it's actually going to start eating away at the lining of the stomach and cause an inflammatory process. So the secret is always to pay attention to the feedback of the body, because as the body rehabilitates and gets enough enzymes in it, then the amount of enzymes the body's producing plus what you're putting in is enough to irritate the system. And that's how you know to back down. And eventually you get to the point where you don't need them anymore as long as you're eating enough enzymatically rich foods. I use enzymes away from meals to basically for the proteolytics effect, to clean the dead proteins out of the body, support the lymphatic system, and help with recovery from exercise and physical stress. But I don't need to eat digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid with food because my body's healthy enough. But there was a time when I had to. And so I explored all this very deeply and did a lot of research and paid attention to what happens with clients and figured out, how to basically regulate the enzymes up, but pay attention because the body starts strengthening. And then if you keep taking it, actually is stressful to the body and produces symptoms that end up getting you put on more drugs or pills.
I use Bioptimizer's HCl product. It has a small amount of enzymes in it too, and it only has 500 milligrams of betaine hydrochloride. But I take that. I do take that in between meals, and I don't get any burning sensation. I don't belch it back up, so I think I'm safe with that. Sean Wasson is watching on YouTube. He says, "What about betaine timing?"
I don't practice what I call chemical medicine. I did functional medicine training for 3 years with one of the leaders in the world on it. And what I found is though I could identify all sorts of stuff in people's bodies, every time I gave them the supplements and the hormone replacement supplements, as soon as they started feeling better, they stopped paying attention to their body and just kept doing the same shit that got them in trouble. So I basically use functional medicine practitioners. I have a doctor I've been working with for 25 years. That's his focus, and he's an expert at it. I only use functional medicine when living 4 doctors and 6 foundation principles is hitting a roadblock. And then I need to say, okay, what is it that you have going on that's blocking you? So it might be heavy metal poisoning. It could be high levels of estrogens. It could be a number of factors. But I would say 98% of my patients don't need any of that if they just follow the program. So the real issue is finding a dream big enough to change for, and giving them the support and the education and getting them connected to suppliers of healthy foods, healthy body care products, cleaning the toxins out of their house, and learning how to live and even how to eat. Like most people eat so fast, they don't realize they're just loading the hell out of their stomach. So, having worked with many biochemistry experts, many of them are my patients. So when it comes to that kind of an approach, I rely on functional medicine doctors and I integrate with them. So if there's timing of certain supplements, I let them direct that, because I found that my time was far better spent teaching people how to be healthy than medicating health with supplements. I think the whole supplement industry is a double-edged sword that's as dangerous as it is helpful.
Yeah, and Chris K kind of asks a redundant question. But is there a best time if you are going to depend on, say, HCl, hydrochloric acid? Is it best to take it with the meal, before the meal, after the meal? How do you see that playing out?
Well, the more unhealthy a person's digestive system is, the more I encourage them to take, let's say you're using Bioptimizer's enzymes.
Plus, yeah, okay.
They're-
Well,
they're-
Masszyme, let's say.
Enzymes is a standard good digestive enzyme. If I just say to someone, I want you to use 3 of these, I have them take 1 at the beginning of the meal, 1 in the middle, and 1 at the end.
That's smart.
And I tell them, especially with the first one, I say, bite the capsule so you break it open so you get an immediate release. One of the simple things you can do that most people don't know, you can take a lemon and squeeze the juice into a cup and just drink the lemon juice throughout the meal. And if you notice that your discomfort with digesting food, your gas goes down, your bloating goes down, your energy levels go up, your mental clarity is better, that tells you you're enzymatically deficient. That's how you know you need digestive enzymes, and it's the cheapest thing in the world to do. It works every time.
And Chris K follows up with the question of, when you say lining damage, are you talking about the mucosa lining or the tissue under the mucosa?
I'm talking about the mucosal lining of the stomach. Remember, about 90 to 95% of people are dehydrated. The mucosal lining of the stomach is over 1 centimeter thick when it's healthy. But if somebody's got any level of dehydration, the stomach's one of the places the body goes to get water to protect the brain. And a lot of people have had ulcers and things like that, so their stomachs are already sensitive and dehydrated. So once the enzymes start eating at the mucosal membrane, it triggers the same kind of bloaty and gassy symptoms that are almost identical to what they had because of poor digestion. So it's actually irritating the mucosal lining of the stomach.
And this is just a compliment. Craig Hollander, who's a big fan of the show, and he's always here supporting me with good questions, says Paul has been consistent through the decades where other teachers have changed their protocols often. He is a wonderful educator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I practice what I preach.
Yeah.
I never did. I wanted to add one more thing for Dr. Diet. Then we also feed on thoughts. So if we're not, like we talked about earlier, if we're not growing our mind and getting involved in hobbies or studying things or learning about philosophy or spiritual development or technical things that are interesting to us, then what happens is we start having this emptiness in our head, and we don't realize human beings are the most creative animals there are out there. So if we don't feed our mind like we've got to feed our emotions and feed our body, then we start eating to try to fill a mental void. And when you look at what most people do with their mind, I just saw a statistic that shocked the piss out of me. The average person today is spending 12.3 hours of screen time.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, there's an old saying, never trust a man whose television is bigger than his bookshelf. And I think that is very true, because the bookshelf is where you grow your mind. The television is where you lose your mind.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I want to put this up for those of us who are interested. I'm sure you can find a clinician at the ChekInstitute.com,
yes.
right?
They're all over the world. At the bottom of the homepage, it says find a practitioner. And you can search from by country, state, level of training. So yes, you can find one near you.
And that's, for those of you listening to the podcast, it's ChekInstitute.com. We're going to take a quick commercial break. I got lots more questions. Those of you watching live, feel free to post questions. We'll be right back with more of Paul Chek. Stay with us.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
C60, also known as Buckminster fullerene, is the most powerful, most versatile antioxidant in the world. It's been shown in studies to double the lifespan of rodents. We all know the importance of taking antioxidants to slow aging, reduce inflammation, and improve mitochondrial function and energy production. But there are literally hundreds of antioxidants that would cost you thousands of dollars to take every day. I take one. I take C60 from C360 Health. Revive and Rejuvenate are two blends that harness the power of C60. Don't waste another minute. Go to shrnetwork.biz/revive and use the code SHR for 15% off and free shipping inside the United States today. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Most people have heard of phytoestrogens, but did you know there are beneficial phytoandrogens? The top source of these is pine pollen. It even contains trace amounts of testosterone and DHEA. If you're looking for a 100% natural testosterone booster, this is worth trying. Lots of men love it, and it even works for women. Lost Empire Herbs offers the highest quality wild harvested non-irradiated pine pollen backed by a 365-day money-back guarantee. It works for you, or you don't have to pay for it with nothing to send back. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lostempire. Use code SHR. Get 15% off your order today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with Paul Chek today about the last 4 doctors you will need. The last one was diet. Did we have a fourth one, or?
Yeah, Dr. Quiet. So Dr. Quiet is in charge of sleep and make sure you're getting enough sleep. And it's also the chief of introspection, taking time to be with yourself, in yourself, and have a relationship with yourself and look at how your life has unfolded each day. So oftentimes I recommend before people go to bed, they look at what did they do well, what did they do that they could have done better, and how are they going to handle that situation. So if you got an argument with someone and it caused disconnection, be real honest about your part in it and ask, how can I stay connected at the heart, and how can I share my wants, feelings, and needs more effectively, and make specific requests and give people the space to share their wants, feelings, and needs, make a specific request, and find if there's a healthy compromise that can be met. It can be used for journaling. It can be used for meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, any kind of self-growth, inner process where you're really putting your awareness into yourself to grow yourself as a human being. And then with sleep, the other thing is people forget that the sun and the moon are the primary drivers of our whole hormonal system. So in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, I actually show how cortisol rises with the sun and inhibits melatonin. And then as the sun comes down, melatonin rises up. So if you do anything that elevates cortisol levels, especially from about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon onward, it delays melatonin release, which then blocks the release of androgen hormones to repair your body. And you don't get a good quality sleep. You might be asleep, but you're not getting regenerative sleep. And I show that the first 4 hours of sleep from 10 o'clock to 2 a.m. is when the body focuses on physical repair. And from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., it focuses on psychogenic, so brain and nervous system repair. And myriads of people have come to me like shift workers, and I can track exactly their kinds of symptoms like headaches and neurological complications to not getting to bed and missing 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. sleep. And I can see a lot of athletes and physical laborers and people that do a lot of physical work suffering from not getting to bed and staying up till midnight watching junk on television or distracting themselves or drinking coffee at dinner time and just laying there buzzing at night. So we really have to remember that we are part of a larger system of life, and the sun and the moon and the earth are the primary drivers. So as our lifestyle has gotten further and further separate from the realities of what makes biological life function, we've suffered for it deeply. So ultimately, what I found through all my research is that you cannot be a healthy person as a 3-doctor master or a 2-doctor master or a 1-doctor master. If you don't have a reason to live and manage yourself, Dr. Happiness, a dream, a goal, or an objective, you won't make the other changes. If you exercise too much or too little, you create problems. If you eat wrong, you create problems. If you don't get enough sleep, you create problems. So you can be a happy, balanced exerciser that eats well, but suffer from lack of sleep. No matter which way you go, you cannot reduce a living philosophy below those 4 categories. And that's really the basis. And so I taught my practitioners, first you have to have a dream, goal, or objective, or no matter how skilled of a doctor or a therapist you are, people aren't going to follow your program. They're just going to keep doing what they're in the habit of because it's medicating their lack of connection to their own life and their lack of creative ability. You got to teach them how to exercise the right amount for their needs, for their level of fitness and biological and biomechanical function, and grow them. You got to teach them how to pay attention to their body and eat real food from real soil, from real farmers, and learn how to listen to what their body needs. And you got to teach them the science of rest, and you got to help them have a relationship with themselves. All the pills and all the supplements and all the surgeries, with rare exceptions, are the side effects of not relating to those 4 doctors. There's no way around it. After 38 years and thousands of patients, I've worked for the most elite sports teams, organizations, militaries, governments, and I've had to point it all back to these things every time. And often what team doctors look at me and say is, God, that's so simple. How come nobody else has figured that out? I said, because you're too busy being fancy and reading medical journals and not paying attention to real health. I said, the last thing you want to do is go to a sick doctor for medical advice and go to a sick trainer or therapist for any kind of health coaching. And most of the people that are telling you what pills to take, I mean, the number of functional medicine doctors that I see that are sick people is mind-boggling. In fact, I had one start a bit of a fight with me at a conference and tell me what I was teaching was bullshit. And this is a huge medical conference with probably 500 people in it. And I was going to have none of this horse shit. So I stood up on the table, took my clothes off, and said, you get up here and show us the results of your program. This is mine. And the whole audience went into an uproar of applause, and that ended his bullshit.
Well, and it's funny. I used to say, never trust a fat doctor. And I've always I always thought it would be prudent for me to interview a doctor and say, so tell me what illnesses you have. Because I don't want to go to a doctor who's on 6 different medications because he can't fix himself. That's like going to a mechanic whose car is always broken down. Why would I give him my car to fix? So
I think, you know, just to be fair, I think illnesses are teachers, and not all of us have the knowledge to know how to protect ourselves against all the ways you can get illness out there. I mean, many people don't know that the asbestos in their walls is making them sick, or that the electromagnetic pollution. So for me, illness is the arrival of the pain teacher, and it teaches you what you need to know, not only to help yourself, but to help other people. And I've found over and over again, anytime I've treated myself effectively to heal something, I can see it in people all around me.
Right.
For example, when you heal gluten intolerance, you walk out into the world and you go, holy fuck, everyone's got gluten intolerance and they don't know it. So I want to help them.
Right.
So I just want to make the distinction. I don't think any of us can have perfect health all the time because there's too much to know and we're in too toxic of a world.
Yeah, that's the real problem.
What we can do is we can engage illness as a teacher and let it guide us to the awareness that we not only need for ourselves, but we need to share with other people to protect them. And then illness becomes an educational endeavor instead of laying on the floor and giving up and doing what everybody else is doing, which hasn't worked very well.
We have a question from R. Vasquez, 818. 818, isn't that an area code in California?
I'm not sure. It sounds like maybe Orange County, or it might even be Hawaii. I don't know.
Who is watching on YouTube right now and asks,
yes.
Morning, Mr. Chek, I see you have a volcano vaporizer.
Yeah.
Please talk about why you smoke cannabis, THC. Thank you. That's presumptive, right? Is that cannabis you're smoking?
No, I don't use cannabis when I work. I find it distracts my ability to stay focused. I use tobacco, clean tobacco with no chemicals added to it, native tobaccos. I use a variety of organically grown, certified organic herbs. I use essential oils. I use tinctures, and I use flower essences. And that moisturizes the tobacco and the herbs because remember, a vaporizer, there's no fire. So you're only getting, I estimate, about 30% of the nicotine. I use marijuana for two things. I'm an artist, so you can see the wall back there. I paint and I teach art therapy, and I use art in my therapy with people. And so when I paint, I find marijuana is really lovely for tapping into and getting visions and downloading visions. And I use it at night as a relaxer and just to celebrate a day of hard work. I think marijuana, like any herb or input, has it's a double-edged sword. Too much and it turns you into someone who stands around staring and not getting anything done and procrastinating. Marijuana also can be very highly toxic if it's not certified organic or biodynamically grown. And I've had countless of people suffering suicidal thoughts and dark negative emotions, and I had to clear the shit marijuana out of their life. So for me, every herb, be it marijuana or anything like that, is an input that you have to experiment with, explore, and figure out how it works for you. My philosophy is I don't care what you're using as long as it's honestly contributing to helping you live fully and be productive. But the day that it's not, you have a problem. So I define an addiction as any repeated behavior that does not produce the results you want. So
and beneficial results, right?
Yes.
Like makes you smarter, makes you happier, makes you a better competitor, makes you sleep, makes whatever. It has to
or helps manage stress.
Right, right.
You know, I love tobacco, and I have a healthy relationship with it. I use the sauna almost every day. I drink lots of the best water you can possibly get. I could go into a whole water story, but I use detox kits regularly to keep my body clean. But I also know when I'm getting too much tobacco because my mind starts to get foggy. And so I know, okay, I got to detox more or cut back. This doesn't matter what it is. It can be sex, money, sugar, any kind of drug. Everything in the world is a double-edged sword. So I teach really a Taoist philosophy. And at 60 years of age, I can tell you, if you can learn this, it'll keep you healthy and save you a lot of hassle. And it's this simple. No matter what it is, not too much, not too little. That's the rule.
Right.
Be honest when it's too much and be honest when it's too little. Find the middle way. And that's how you stay in the middle of that river of mind where you're not rigid or chaotic.
I'm going to throw some words out, and I'd just like you to riff with your thoughts on it, okay?
Yeah.
Caffeine/coffee.
To the degree that it's helpful, it's helpful. To the degree that it's not, it's not.
Okay. All right. The sun.
Until you're getting burned, enjoy it, and then cover up.
There you go. Intermittent fasting.
Good idea.
So you like it? You think intermittent fasting produces some positive benefits, right?
Yeah, I for years I did typically a Saturday, And you can use a tea called fasting tea by Yogi Tea.
Yeah.
It's very helpful to keep your blood sugar stable because a lot of people have blood sugar handling problems. And so fasting on water, for example, can be very stressful to people with blood sugar handling problems. But Yogi fasting tea doesn't make you hungry. It stabilizes your blood sugar. And giving your body a 24-hour rest from food is phenomenal. You'll feel lighter. Your head will be clear. You'll sleep better. You'll recover better from exercise. And I'm a highly skilled practitioner of the use of plant medicines who's conducted over 450 healing ceremonies. So I always fast during ceremonies and even sometimes to prepare, depending on what plant medicine I'm using and what dose and things like that. So I've got a lot of experience with intermittent fasting. I think it's one of the most healing practices there is. In fact, long-term fasting would probably be more effective for healing serious diseases than almost anything out there,
including cancer. Yeah,
yes.
I haven't eaten since 5:30 yesterday, and I probably won't eat again until tonight, or I may just ride it out. I get to a point where I almost feel euphoric, and it comes on pretty quickly because I've been doing intermittent fasting now, or time-restricted feeding, or whatever you want to call it. That's connotes less zealotry. I've been doing it for over 10 years. I did my first interview about the rodent study, the every other day, that the every other day diet came from, with Dr. Mark McCarty. And he did that study in a hospital in New Mexico, but he's a UCLA trained physician. And I thought, this is interesting. And it's a matter of convenience. Like, I didn't feel like eating today. I didn't train. So I thought, I'll just ride this out. Probably by tonight, I'll not want to eat because I'll have this buzz, and then I'll maybe go into tomorrow. But yeah, I'm the same way. I do. What about hallucinogenics and the new fad of microdosing? And keep in mind that I did so much LSD in high school and as a young man that I have to take fairly large doses to feel anything at all. But what do you think about it?
I think microdosing is very helpful, but here's the thing: all psychedelics dissolve the ego. So they disable the default mode network, which allows the unconscious to flow up into the consciousness. If a person does not already have a healthy ego, then all psychedelics will put them into a deeper state of unconsciousness, which retards psychological growth in the long run. If somebody's overly egotistical, then the psychedelics will teach them exactly why they're having problems in their life, because it'll bring all their shadow up into their consciousness, and they'll begin to be much more aware of their way they're behaving in relationships, the way they're behaving in their life, etc. I mean, they're the great revealers, right? So just the carte blanche use of psychedelic medicines without skilled guidance is no different than the carte blanche use of sugar, coffee, or any other drug. But I think if they're intelligently used, I've helped many people heal from things like cutting disorders, deep grief from deaths in the family, a lot of psychological issues. I've found very, very helpful with low-dose psychedelic therapies. But I think what's probably most important, and we're getting to the point now where it can happen, is a properly run shamanic ceremony, so the person can actually have a properly guided, well-stabilized experience of basically confronting their unconscious and really taking stock of what the beliefs and the behaviors that have been programmed into them are, so they know what they want to continue and not continue. But I as a general rule, psychedelic medicines are extremely good, but if they're used by people that already have psychological problems and poor mental, emotional self-management and don't have an ego yet, then they actually can keep people into a perpetual state where they're blissed out, but they're not contributing, just like smoking pot all the time. So again, it's all about what are you ready for? How well can you manage yourself? And the other thing is those psychedelic medicines, we adapt to them. With the only exception is DMT, which I've never seen anybody adapt to, but it's the most powerful drug in the world and not something to play with. So what I use, and I researched this for years on myself using a number of different psychedelics, and I found that you need to take 2 days off at least every 4 days or what happens is exactly what you said. You just get no effect out of it anymore.
So I when I was a young man, LSD, we didn't have shrooms. I lived in Brooklyn, and Queens. So city boy, and we had plenty of LSD in different forms. And my cousin was attending Stony Brook, and he ended up retiring from JPL. He did his thesis on the neutrino. So these guys were all very brilliant guys.
Yeah.
And he made LSD in eyedropper form. And it hits you immediately. You put a drop in each eye, and literally you're tripping in like seconds.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's how fast it hits you. And I really fell in love with that stuff. And there was a period of time where I tripped every day. I was walking to high school, putting the drops in my eyes. I tripped every day for like 2 weeks. And but now, so a micro dose for me is about 600
micrograms.
Well, no, I'm talking about shrooms now.
Oh,
right?
okay, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, 600 milligrams of shrooms. I know a lot of people use like 200, and they feel, I don't feel anything. But also, I've done a lot of research. We've done shows about it, and there's a lot of the people working in hospital settings and using hallucinogenics to help people with major depressive disorder deal with their onset of cancer and all this sort of stuff. And they do guided, they stay there with the person and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people coming to conclusions that if you want to have a real meaningful impact from a hallucinogenic, you got a full-on trip. Because this microdosing, there's the one guy that was just on the show said that they've looked at microdosing and they don't see any changes in behavior or anything like that.
Well, that's why I think a skilled coach or therapist is so important. What I find with people that have a lot of physical, emotional, sexual, or psychological trauma is that microdosing helps open the unconscious at a trickle rate so they can begin to see. For example, I have them journal, or I use art therapy. I say, draw what's coming out of you, sketch it, even if it's stick figures. Because whenever you look at something that's in the unconscious, it's no longer unconscious. Feelings buried alive never die. So whatever wounds we don't address are pulling the strings all day long at an unconscious level, and we just don't realize it. And often we're projecting our biases and pains and judgments onto others, not realizing that we're actually avoiding dealing with what's inside of us. So we're using a smokescreen to push what we don't like about ourselves away. So I think microdosing in guided therapy is very good because it lets you have a trickle, a slow process where you can engage it. But in a real full-blown shamanic ceremony, people that have a lot of trauma can become very, very dangerous and out of control, and can make it very disruptive for other people in the group. And it takes a lot of skill to handle them. So I have a lot of preparation work that I do to prepare. Some people have to coach with me for 2.5 years before a full-blown ceremony. So I know that they're ready to deal with Pandora's box when it opens.
We're going to take our last commercial break and wrap up the show. We have one more question that seems very intriguing to me about intestinal yeast that you had spoken about in the past. And then we'll also plug the website again and tell people about the oncoming book. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of Paul Chek. If you'd like a shortcut to better sleep, more energy, and calmer, more stable moods, then you should make sure you're supplementing with magnesium daily. Let me tell you why. About 75% of people are magnesium deficient. This deficiency can lead to higher levels of anxiety, irritability, trouble sleeping, and low energy. It can even contribute to foot and leg cramps while you sleep. Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers is the single best magnesium supplement in the world. Simply take 2 capsules before you go to bed, and you'll be amazed by the improvements in your mood and energy levels and how much more rested you feel when you wake up. I take Magnesium Breakthrough every night, and I sleep better because I use it. Go to magbreakthrough.com/SHR and use the code SHR10 during checkout to save 10% off and get free shipping. Check it out. Plant medicine has become all the rage for mental optimization. Now there's an ancient plant medicine rapidly growing in popularity that experts believe might just be the alcohol of the future. It's called True Kava. Kava is a natural food-grade elixir that has been used for over 3,000 years by South Pacific Islanders as safe, non-addictive alternative to drugs and alcohol. By naturally boosting the brain's main feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, Kava provides you with both increased relaxation and mental clarity at the same time. True Kava is a new form of stabilized full-spectrum traditional Kava that is third-party lab tested for quality and safety. Go to shrnetwork.biz/True Kava, and that's TRUKAVA, all one word, and use code SHR for 25% off today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expressions of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. Restore Cell's Stem Cell Awakening Serum, along with their other products, contain potent formulations of blue copper peptide and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Buy their complete set and receive a free exfoliating cleanser. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. Remodel your skin today. Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where brawn and brains finally meet.
Hey, welcome back. We're going to wrap up the show. We're talking with Paul Chek, and it's a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, sir. You too.
Yeah, and so we have a question here, or a comment from Craig Hollander. He said, Paul was one of the first instructors in the fitness field to educate people about intestinal yeast and other pathogens residing in the gut. Talk about this. Is this still a big problem, or is it a bigger problem, Tim?
It's massive. It is massive. I've got research in my library showing that 90% of the world population has a fungal infection, and other books showing 90% of the world population has an active parasite infection. You know, whenever you're eating too much sweet stuff of any type, but the worst is processed sugar of any kind, you will feed the fungi. They're everywhere. I mean, the laboratories spend millions of dollars to develop clean rooms for making foods and electronics and stuff because fungi are so hard to filter out of the air. So the fungal spores are everywhere. They're part of nature. They're the natural decomposers. And so whenever we're eating processed packaged foods, dead foods, or foods that have been sitting too long, or bringing the sugar levels up in our body too high, these things go crazy because they're sugar consumers. In fact, there's an entire theory that cancer is really created by fungi in our body, and that the cancer is a sugar consumer trying to protect the brain and the nervous system from dying. You know, I have a whole comprehensive program called Healing Fungal and Parasite Infections, the Absolute Essentials, which is available online in our online learning at the Chek Institute. And I show you exactly how these things happen, what to do about it, simple approaches to healing fungal and parasite infections. But one of the key things about fungal infections is funguses can manipulate the immune system. They can actually downregulate and control the immune system. Most parasites can't do that. So once you have a fungal infection, your immune system is destabilized.
Mhm.
And that makes you a target for every kind of illness you can think of out there. And I have coached people through thousands and thousands of fungal infections. One of the most common things I find connected to all sorts of diseases, and one of the first things we've got to focus on. And for athletes, it's really critical too, because once you get an inflammatory reaction in the gut, what most people don't realize is the organs actually control the motor system. So if you look at how the nervous system is wired, the sympathetic chain ganglia that run along the spine will actually downregulate blood supply to any muscle or muscle group that competes with an organ that's inflamed or ill for blood, because blood brings in oxygen, it brings in food, and it brings in waste removal. So if you have any inflammation in a gut, especially in the gut, inflammation causes organs to expand. So it reflexively shuts off your abdominal muscles to allow expansion, which is why when women are premenstrual, you notice their lower abdomen distends, because if they didn't, it would compress the uterus and would cut the circulation down, and they would be having menstrual symptoms for weeks and weeks. So what I showed, I produced a program called Flatten Your Abs Forever, and it's all about how all the glands and the organs are regulating the whole motor system. And most people can't, no matter how many crunches and sit-ups they do, never flatten their abs, because the internal organs are reflexively shutting the muscles down to make more room. So the organs actually control the motor system, which is why I taught all my practitioners, you got to assess the internal systems, because they're higher on the hierarchy of control in the body than the muscles are. The muscles are at the very bottom. They're slaves to the organs, glands, and cranial nerves. So yes, it's a very, very big problem. And stress, the more stress you have, the more susceptible you are to a fungal infection.
So people can go to chekinstitute.com and find a video on that.
Yeah, it's a whole education program. It was about 4 or 5 DVDs when it was on DVD. But it teaches you everything you need to know. It blows people's minds, I'll tell you that.
Well, this actually makes a lot of sense to me, and I'll tell you why. I've been observing the level of stomach distension without body fat accumulation. So we see very lean people, they look like they're 4 months pregnant. And I've been pondering this for a long time. I'm like, what is it? What's going on? Obviously, I thought maybe it was visceral fat. Maybe these people are mildly insulin resistant and the body's storing fat there. Then I started thinking about the sheer amount of drugs people take, and maybe the liver is getting enlarged. I've also thought about iron. I have to donate blood because for some reason I accumulate a lot of iron. It could be because of the testosterone that I inject. But I pondered this. So this is brilliant. I'm going to go watch those videos. I'm really fascinated by this idea.
Well, that's actually explained in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. I actually talk about it right in the book and show diagrams. And it's been known. Byron Robinson, MD, in 1899 wrote a book called The Abdominal and Pelvic Brain, and he reproduced the second edition in 1907, both of which I have in my library. And he mapped the entire control system of the autonomic nervous system and the relationship of the glands. And then Francis Marion Pottinger, if you look at the book Symptoms of Visceral Disease, the 7th edition, he shows you all the pathways and all the reflexes. I spent years studying this stuff, and everything you just said is true. But anything that inflames any part of the intestinal tract from mouth to anus will shut the abdominal wall down to make room for the swollen organ. And that's why you get all these fit, sick people who have, lean bodies, but a distended abdomen. And most of them are eating gluten. And you get all the vegans that think they're doing the right thing, but they're eating a bunch of processed garbage. And so they have lean, unhealthy bodies with a swollen belly. This is as common as white bread, unfortunately.
This is so sad. I mean, we are being assaulted from every angle as humans today. It's just startling to me. There's also a YouTube channel I want to promote real quick. YouTube.com/Paul Chek Live, PaulChekLive, where Paul is generous and has been putting videos up to teach people about a lot of these things. For how long now? I mean, you've been doing like a couple videos a week now?
I've been doing a video a week for probably since about maybe 2006. There's over 750 videos there. I also have a lot of great interviews and information on my podcast, which is Living 4D. That's 4 doctors, Living 4D with Paul Chek, and interviews with the top scientists, doctors, therapists, thinkers, people like Chris Ryan, who wrote the book Sex at Dawn, is my current interview, and it's fantastic. So there's just a truckload, and my podcasts are very deep. They're not short, quick things. They're real deep explorations.
You know, I'm a firm believer that, well, let me backtrack. So I believe that procreation is the only job we have on this planet. Maslow has nothing to do with our evolutionary edicts. And we are supposed to progress the species and then clear off the planet and let that continue to grow. And if you believe that, then you have to believe that there are mechanisms that reward us the more sex we have. Oxytocin is one of those rewards. We know that people who have more sex, men who have more sex, become completely bulletproof to prostate cancer. And so when you start to look at this, the role of sex in both men and women, and the fact that there's a lot of people not having sex and they get older because of illnesses and they just don't want to be bothered. I'm a firm believer that the more sex you have, the longer you're going to live. You think that's an absurdity?
No, I think there's a real truth to it. I have 2 wives, so that I've got that one covered. You know, the other thing is, one of the most common causes of prostate problems is a fungal infection. That's well researched. If you look at the work of Doug Kaufman, he's got a book called The Fungus Link. He's got another one called Cancer, and he wrote a third one. And he showed very good science. And I've worked with prostate survivors groups. I've had countless men with benign prostate hypertrophy and prostate cancer. And always an antifungal diet is an essential component to treatment. So my point is, you can be having a lot of sex, but if you're eating wrong and living wrong and you give yourself a fungal infection, you'll just have a good sex with a prostate pathology.
Right.
But I think sex is rewarding on many levels. I think there's a point at which, if the sex is no longer bonding and nourishing, it becomes mechanical. So it's just like masturbating with someone else's body. So I think, though a lot of sex is good, it should be producing a lot of love and connection, or it's a pathology.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Paul, it's been fascinating and so enjoyable to have you on this show today. I have to thank Wade for connecting us.
Yes, thank you, Wade. I love you, buddy.
Yeah, and please, anytime you have something to get out there, please email Elisa and let us get you back on the show to help you with your mission as well, because your mission is my mission. It's the same thing.
Yes, thank you.
Educate.
I've got a new book coming out. It'd be fun for us to talk about it. I'll get you a copy as soon as it comes off the press. I think you'll dig it.
I can't wait. Paul, have a wonderful day. Wait, let's see. There's one more comment. I hate to cut out on people. Gail Coonley says thank you to you. She's saying that.
Thank you, Gail. Great spirit. And thank you, Carl, for being a leader.
There you go. Thank you, Paul. We'll talk again soon, I promise. Take care.
All right. Love.
All right, and that's it for today. I'm off the air tomorrow. I got lots to do here at the studio, and I always have to try to get caught up. And so I try to take Fridays off now. But we have a long list of great shows next week, and hope you can share some time and watch live. But if you can't, there's always the podcast. There's always the video. But remember, share this show. There could be one thing that Paul talked about today that someone will hear and it will resonate with them, and they'll think, I need to do that. And their life will be improved just because you took the time to share this show. So you know what? Don't do it for yourself. Do it for somebody else. We'll see you Monday with more Superhuman Radio. Take care.